Good morning. There you
Good
go.
morning.
Hey, it's
Yeah.
good to see you. Hi, Anne. Welcome. And Peter,
Oh,
glad you're with us this morning. Man, I'm really, Jen, I was really appreciating your column in the Liberal this week about February being the shortest month, but that longest season. That just really spoke truth to me. And I'm grateful for this turning toward March, but it's a little slog to get to spring still.
It is. But I will say my dogs are much happier now that it's a little bit warmer.
No kidding. No kidding. Well, Anne and Peter, so glad you're with us this morning as our care companions. Our care companions are church members that are trained by the ministry team to be deep listeners and kind of accompany church members in their spiritual journey and with grief, whatever comes up. And they're available. Anne and Peter are available right after the service in a Zoom room. If you feel like you'd like to talk with someone or there's a question that's on your heart, they are available in a private Zoom room. And Anne and Peter, thanks so much for being with us this morning and available after the service. We'll get started with our welcome. I see people are already putting in the chat. Welcome. So good morning. Good morning to all of you. I'm Reverend Justin Schroeder, one of the ministers at First Universalist Church, and really glad you're with us this morning, whether you're with us here live, watching on our Zoom channel or YouTube, or if you're joining us later on the podcast or the recording on YouTube. We're just really glad you're here. If you are live with us, looks like you're already doing this, just say hello in the chat if you'd like and let us know where you're joining us from. And if you're listening to the recording later, we'd love to hear from you as well. Send us a note, send us an email, let us know where you're listening from and how you found this faith community. We'd love to connect. So wherever you're tuning in from this morning, welcome. Several weeks ago, I preached about mosaics, these really beautiful pieces of art that are made up of all these tiny little pieces that together make a beautiful whole. And that's how I imagine this virtual congregation as we stream into this space on Zoom, on YouTube. As we come into this space, each of us is a little piece of the mosaic of First Universalist. Each of us brings into this space our brokenness, our gratitude, our grief, our resilience, our joy, our yearning, our heartbreak, our desire for more life, for more love, for more connection, for more aliveness. We bring that into this space to create this beautiful mosaic, this community of First Universalist. And in this community, we welcome and affirm and protect the light in each human heart. We listen deeply to where love is calling us next. And with humility, compassion, and bravery, we act to create a more just world. We do all of these things as a faith community committed to dismantling white supremacy culture and building beloved community, a place of belonging, a place of shared liberation. This is who we are, and this is the life that we invite you into. There's a lot going on after the service today, so I wanted to say a few words about that. For those of you who are brand new to us or have been with us just a couple of Sundays or maybe joined us on Wednesday for worship and are just kind of finding out who we are as a community, you're invited to attend First Step right after the service. First Step is facilitated by a church member, and it's where you can meet other people new to this community and learn more about Unitarian Universalism and First Universalist, and you can learn about ways to be more connected to our community. At 11:30 today, I hope that you'll join us for the State of the Church meeting. This is our mid-year update about the ministry and our visionary goals, about kind of the financial landscape of the church, an update on our capital campaign. That's at 11:30. We hope you'll join us for the State of the Church meeting. Because of the State of the Church meeting, our fellowship hour right after the service, as well as our First Step class, those will be abbreviated gatherings just ending right before 11:30 so that as many of you can join us live for the State of the Church meeting as are able to. Religious education classes for children and youth will meet as usual, and the UUs in 12-step spirituality, that will meet as usual as well. Links to all of these gatherings and more can be found on our website as well as in the order of service. We'll put that link in the chat box for you this morning. And finally, I want to just let you know, we've changed up our order of service, of the flow of the service this morning. And so right after our chalice lighting, we'll go right into a story from Seth Anderson-Matz, and we'll just delight in Seth's story together. So friends, here we are. Here we are together coming into this virtual space, recreating this beautiful mosaic together. Here we are, holding a space to let love speak to our hearts, to let our spirits catch up with our bodies, to mark this moment in time. Here we are, coming into this space to know and to remember and to feel ourselves beloved once again. So let's take a moment to settle in, to find our shared breath, and to find that connection across time and space by really bringing our collective awareness to our breath. We'll take a couple of deep, slow, smooth, intentional breaths together. And I invite you to join me in that now. We'll do one more together. Welcome once again. And I invite you to join me in saying the words for the lighting of our chalice as Ian and Sylvia light our chalice this morning.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Good morning, friends. Today, I have something to tell you. And it's something that you may not know. And it's something that you might find a little weird. I am here to tell you that there is something living in your belly. Yeah. But don't worry, it's not a person or an animal or a creature. It's not a germ or a sickness or anything like that. It's not dangerous. It's not there to hurt you. It's just a something. And it's always been there. It's always going to be there. Right there in your belly. Forever and ever. You want to know what's even weirder about the something living in your belly? It talks. That's right, it talks. And it's not talking about just any old thing it wants to talk about. Oh, no. It's talking directly to you in a language that only you can understand. Want to know what's even weirder than that? It can predict the future. That's right, this something in your belly can predict the future, and it knows exactly what you need to do to be safe and happy and healthy and fulfilled for your whole entire life. And it knows exactly what you need to do to get there. How wild is that? If we listen really closely to the something in our belly, it will remind us that, oh my goodness, of course, we want those same things for all the other people in the world too, right? We want everyone to be as happy and healthy and safe and fulfilled as we want to be. So that something clues us in on when we need to connect with other people too. The thing might say, hey, we haven't heard from our best friend in a while. Maybe we should send her a text message. Or it might say, hey, we haven't talked to our grandma for a while. Maybe we should send her a letter. Or it might say, hey, that friend of ours from church just lost someone in their family. Maybe we should reach out. This thing has a very good way of reminding us that our well-being is connected to the well-being of the people around us. Now, the more you practice listening to this future seeing, all-knowing something in your belly, the easier it will be to hear it. And when we're born, we can hear it clear as a bell. The easiest thing in the world to hear. Because before we learn how to talk, it might be the only thing that we can actually understand. The something tells us that we're hungry or we're tired or we want affection, and it tells us exactly what we need to do to get those needs met, which for babies is screaming and crying, right? So then as we get older, the something gets drowned out by the sounds of so many other things. Stress, self-consciousness, fear, trauma, just to name a few. Now, if you sometimes hear something in your belly, or maybe in your mouth, or maybe in your brain, and that something tells you unkind things about yourself, or encourages you to make choices that could hurt you or other people, it might feel really difficult to figure out which voice you're supposed to listen to. I think all of us struggle with that sometimes, and some of us more than others. But I want to be very clear that this something in your belly that I'm talking about will only tell you positive, responsible choices and things about yourself. The something I'm talking about wants only the best for you and the people you love. And although you may not always like what it has to say, it will always speak to you with kindness and respect. And if you have a hard time telling these somethings apart, I encourage you to ask for help from someone you trust. Meanwhile, there are a few things you can do to hear that something in your belly a little more clearly. You can pray or meditate or engage in another spiritual practice. You can practice paying attention to what your body feels like when the something in your body's talking. You can change the pace of your life to create more time for self-reflection. But whatever you do, remember that all you need to know about what you need to do and who you're meant to be is already inside of you, right there in your belly, forever and ever. Amen.
Thanks. Thank you, Seth, for that story. A beautiful story about trusting our gut, about trusting our deepest knowings and our deepest experiences, those little whispers that, those reminders that we have the knowing inside us if we can make the space and the time to really listen to it. And that can guide us individually and collectively. And I want to say to the congregation, as I heard Seth share this story, I was really thinking about our collective knowing as a congregation, this deep knowing that we have in our collective gut as a congregation, that housing is a human right. It is a birthright. It is about dignity. It is the foundation for mental and emotional and economic and social and spiritual well-being, that housing is just critical. And the entire time I've been with First Universalist, this knowing has been alive and evident. Many of you know we have a decades-long partnership with Habitat for Humanity. We do, before the pandemic, we were doing monthly builds and week-long summer builds. And back in 2013, Habitat was our holiday giving recipient, and we collected together. We invited friends and family and neighbors. We collected over $100,000 to be the lead sponsor of a house, the house that love built with Habitat for Humanity. We've also done great work with Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative. We're part of their coalition working on affordable housing. We've opened up our church for those experiencing homelessness to have a temporary shelter and home. We've made meals at Simpson Shelter. It's just something woven into the fabric of First Universalist. We know housing is a human right. It's what we do. It's what we know. And we work for that together. And so today in our offering, we have a really unique opportunity to support not only affordable housing, but to live more fully into our racial justice commitments. Many of you know that Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, that's BLUE, they purchased 8 abandoned lots in North Minneapolis with the intention on each of those lots of creating a housing cooperative and developing affordable housing for Black and Indigenous folks. This project is moving forward. It's a really exciting time. And Blue, Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, they've applied for some funding from the city of Minneapolis, funding that is designed to help create and build more affordable housing. And Blue is planning to build on one of those sites as a pilot project. In conversation with Lena Gardner, who's the executive director of Blue, First Universalist has committed $20,000 to this effort. We're joining all of the other UU churches in the Twin Cities to help finance this 4-unit building. So collectively, the Twin Cities congregations have committed about $100,000. Blue is leading the way in this new housing cooperative model, and we are thrilled to answer this call and to support these efforts. So as a faith community, we gather to give and receive and grow every Sunday. If you're able to give financially to this effort, and there's the slide of Blue and the vision of Blue, if you're able to give financially, there's a number of ways you can give. You can give online, you can give via text, you can give via check. They're all outlined on your screen. And if you are in a place of needing to receive support this morning, support for your own housing or for food or for medical bills, whatever it might be, please know that we are here and we have an emergency fund designed for these kinds of needs, and we would be happy to support your need. We do give and receive and grow. It is a dance, and we recognize we need one another in this time. And so this morning, as we give and receive our offering, we'll share some images from Blue and some images of this project, a rendering of what one of the homes might look like, and we'll hear some beautiful music from Dean McGraw. Let us give and receive our offering. I'm so grateful for the ministry that Blue is doing, and so grateful we can be a part of it, that we can be collaborators and co-conspirators in creating the beloved community, creating a world where everyone has what they need to thrive and survive and bring their gifts to the world. And so, dear ones, as we prepare for a time of quiet and prayer and reflection, let's once again bring our attention to our breath and our breathing. Let's take a couple of deep, slow, mindful breaths together, breathing in and breathing out. Just letting our sit bones settle, feeling our feet on the floor. Breathing in, feeling our lungs fill up. Breathing out, letting our belly relax. And breathing in. Breathing out, knowing we are connected by this shared breath. Beloveds, here we are. Here we are in the middle of our wild and precious lives. Here we are living these strange and beautiful and unpredictable lives. Here we are, we've carved out time and space to enter into the wilderness of our lives, to sit with our knowings, with the murmurings, with the whispers of our spirit, to journey into those places, those wild places of grief, to journey into those wild places of not knowing, to confront the mystery that lives deep in us and all around us. Here we are, our wild and precious lives in that wild space. Here we are, open to the gifts that surround us, those clearings we find, those moments of stillness, those reminders we are not alone, those gestures of kindness that carry us through and to another day. And today for our prayer, I offer these words, this poem called "Beloved is Where We Begin" by poet Jan Richardson. If you would enter into the wilderness, do not begin without a blessing. Do not leave without hearing who you are. Beloved, named by the one who has traveled this path before you. Do not go without letting it echo in your ears. And if you find it is hard to let it into your heart, do not despair. This is what this journey is for. You cannot promise this blessing will free you from danger, from fear, from hunger or thirst, from the scorching of the sun or the fall of the night. But I can tell you that on this path, there will be help. I can tell you that on this way, there will be rest. I can tell you that you will know the strange graces that come to our aid only on a road such as this, that fly to meet us, bearing comfort and strength, that come alongside us for no other cause than to lean themselves toward our ear and with their curious insistence, whisper our name. Beloved, beloved, beloved. Spirit of love and life, as we journey together, life ever changing, waves of grief and gratitude washing over us. We know that the cycle of life turns for us all. So I invite you now to share in the chat, or simply to speak out loud, or simply hold in the silent sanctuary of your heart the names that you wish to hold, the names of your beloveds. I invite you to name the challenges you face, to call to mind and say out loud, or type the joys and gratitudes that brighten your days, to name the worry and gladness that is alive in your heart in this moment. Beloveds, we hold and witness the joys and sorrows that are with us and in us and around us. And we pray that the grip of addiction may be loosened, that the weight of oppression may be lightened, that grief may be shared, that joy will break through, and that love will make every suffering bearable for us all. May it be so, and blessed be. I invite you to sing with Sarah and Franco, sing Spirit of Life together.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
So grateful for music, for this time together. So, beloveds, I'm going to tell you the truth. We're going to talk about grief this morning. And my experience of talking about grief these days is it can be a little overwhelming. So I want to just invite you to take really good care of yourself. Maybe there's a point you need to tune me out and tune out what we're talking about together, or you need to walk around or move your body or close your eyes or whatever it is that helps you to manage what can feel like an overwhelming feeling sometimes. I trust you know how to take good care of yourselves if you listen to that thing that lives in your belly, as Seth told us about this morning. We know how to do this. We know what we need, and we can trust that. So, like I said, I want to talk a little bit about grief this morning. And it happened a couple of weeks ago. I was driving somewhere by myself, which is something that rarely happens these days. And I was listening to the radio, and the author that was talking about the experience of collective grief of a large scale, right? So like what happens when there is a war or a genocide or a pandemic, and the amount of loss is just so overwhelming. We can't even really conceive of it. That there are points in society, points in history when this has happened, right? Where the amount of loss has just been so large that we can hardly even really grapple with it. So I know this is happening for all of us. We are still very much in the midst of the pandemic of racism that has been part of our country for the last 400 plus years. We are very much right in the middle still of this pandemic of COVID-19. And we have been living with the loss of very particular loved ones, ones who were important to us and whose lives we have lost. But we have also been living in the midst of this huge collective loss with ripples we can barely even comprehend, right? So some of those ripples we're starting to learn about already. Just this week, some new information came out about life expectancy in the United States and how for Black Americans in this past year, life expectancy has dropped by 3 years. For Latinx folks by 2 years, for white folks by 1 year. In the course of 1 year's time, life expectancy has dropped that much. We don't even know what that means all the way yet, and it's still going. So we are in this time of fairly immense collective loss and very personal loss as well. All of this at one time, and it's not over yet. So here we are. Look, I'm already overwhelmed myself just by talking about all of that. So here's what I need when that happens. I need to find ways to go in sideways, to let some of the grief out in ways that feel manageable and possible, to experience things. And that's where I need ritual and ceremony and art and music and poetry, anything that the Quaker author and activist Parker Palmer talks about as a third thing, right? Some way that we can mediate our experience in a way that works for us, right? So these third things are critical. I had this experience about a week ago where I dropped into a group of colleagues, dear ones that I love and who love me, and we know each other really well. And we were going to talk about our experience of loss. And I had missed all the check-in and all the stuff that got us ready and all the art and music. So all I got was this question, what have you lost this year? And I was asked to just sit and go straight at it. And do you know what I did? I got up and walked right out of the room, which is one of the benefits of Zoom life together, is I was like, you know what? I cannot handle that. I'm up and I'm out of here. And then when they finally put on some music, I could listen and I could let myself feel and I could begin to come at the question. So I'm talking about the importance of coming in sideways, right? And letting the grief come in the ways that we can manage. So for me, I noticed this week that grief came in one particular sideways form. And it showed up and took me off guard, and it came in the form of an email from my daughter's teacher. So like many of you who work for or have kids in the Minneapolis public schools, my family has been adjusting as elementary schools start to shift back to some in-person learning. Now, this is a very complicated time for many of us, as vaccines are still not available for the majority of people and not at all for kids, as funding has been sparse for the needed changes that would make schools actually safer, and as families and the staff are struggling with all the losses that have come with distance learning and the very real fears about what it might be like and the risks that come with being back together in person. So there's all of this swirling, this constant reality too, that the risk and the harm falls disproportionately on people of color and Indigenous folks, that it falls disproportionately on people with disabilities and underlying health conditions. The risk falls disproportionately on people living in poverty or in insecure housing, on solo parents. All of this, the hurt and the harm is immense. So this is the backdrop, the context of the reality of the times for so many families and students and staff in Minneapolis right now. So it's with this backdrop, right, that so many of us are facing, that my family faced this question several weeks ago of whether to send our elementary aged kid back to in-person school or keep her at home in distance learning. Now, we spent a lot of time on this decision. We weighed our options in light of our family needs and risks. We noted our privilege and asked ourselves how we could use it for the greater good in this moment. We did our own reading and consideration of the facts of the current COVID climate, and we talked to other parents and each other. And as with so many decisions during this pandemic time, there's no perfect way. There's no one right way to proceed. There's only the best decision that we can make with the information we have in light of our own particular circumstances in that moment. So we moved through feelings of hope and possibility and then deep concern. And for us, we came to the decision finally that we would keep our daughter at home for the rest of this year in distance learning. We'd see how it goes. And we know this is just our decision and we are not judging anyone else's. We know we're all doing the best that we can with the information we have, judging what's best for our family and our community. So it's in light of this decision that this email from our daughter's teacher came in this week. It was simple, right? It was a simple email saying goodbye to those of us whose kids were staying in distance learning. And so those kids would be moving on to a new teacher, the distance learning teacher. Now, I knew this change was coming. We all did, that we were going to be losing our favorite teacher and our daughter would face one more change in a year full of loss and change already. But this goodbye email and the marching days of the calendar that told me it was really coming made it all a little too real. So I did what I think any mature person would do in a situation like that. I decided to ignore it. I decided I just wouldn't open the email and that way it wouldn't be real. So I just let it sit there. I don't know. Have y'all ever done anything like that? So I let it sit there and I let it sit there honestly until I absolutely had to face it. I had to face it because my daughter was understandably having feelings, feeling sad and nervous about this change. And she needed me to show up for her as the grown-up in the room. So I opened up the email and I read about what the transition was going to be like and what was going to happen. And there, of course, was her teacher being the rock star that the teacher has been all along. The teacher saying, yes, this is hard. Yes, this is one more loss and change in the midst of a hard year for everyone. And your kids are brilliant. They're brilliant at taking care of themselves and each other. They've been showing it to us all year. They are resilient, adaptive beings. And while this will be one more hard change for some of them and one easier change for others, they will do it and they're going to be okay. And they're going to find their way through. So often these messages that are about my kids that I get from the teachers or the other adults in their lives, I feel like they could be offered straight to me too, to us, that we are more resilient than we know. That if we look at the history of this year, we have weathered change after change and we are resilient. We know how to take care of ourselves and each other. We can do this too. So I read this beautiful, simple email from my kiddo's teacher and I just lost it. It was early in the morning. And of course I sent back, the grown-up, thankful email full of gratitude, which I very much felt. But then I just started crying. And I had a meeting I needed to be in, and I had work that was on a tight deadline. And as much as I tried to tell myself to stuff it down, I just couldn't. And so I let it flow. The grief was certainly coming at an inconvenient time. And I wonder if this has happened to you through this pandemic. It has happened to me so often, and it's a signal. The relief valve needs to be let up a little bit. I need to let a little of this huge grief we are all experiencing in our own particular ways. I need to let it out a little bit and a little bit. And I've been wondering how the news of Reverend Justin's leaving in June has landed with you all in light of this time of so much grief and loss and change already. I've wondered if for some of you it's landed just like that teacher's email did for me, where I was just like, I can't. I hear you, you matter to me, This change matters to me, and I just can't. I can't let in one more thing, one more loss, one more change. Sure, I know and I trust that I will show up and be the grown up, and I will say all those things that are right and true, that we are going to be fine, that this is a great opportunity for Justin and for the church, that all is going to be well, because I know it will be. But that grown up part of me also needs to let out some of the loss, some of that kid in me that wants to just dig in my heels, right? And say, nope, not happening, not doing it. So I am grateful that this is not an abrupt change for us as a community, that we have several months to be in this, to let our feelings go in all the ways that they will, right? With maybe some anger, maybe some distancing, maybe some desire for more closeness, maybe all the waves as grief and loss and change move through us. I trust we can handle it. I trust we will make our way through. And I trust that whether it's this particular grief or others, we're going to need to let ourselves flow at some points. So I want to invite us into a practice this morning. This is the practice of Lectio Divina, which sounds fancy, but it really just means the practice of sacred reading. So what I do when we do this practice of Lectio Divina together is I take a third thing. So for me, that's often a piece of poetry or prose, and I read it through once, and then I read it through again, asking you and asking myself to think about what it is stirring in us. What is it calling our attention to? What's coming up as we hear it? So today, the third thing, the sacred reading I want to invite us to do together, comes from the author and activist Adrienne Maree Brown. So Adrienne Maree Brown, many of you know, wrote the book Emergent Strategy. And here's that third thing that we will engage in together. I'm going to read it through once, and then I'll go more slowly and invite you to respond in the chat, okay? Remember, you are water. Of course you leave salt trails. Of course you are crying. Flow. P.S. If there happens to be a multitude of griefs upon you, individual and collective, or fast and slow, or small and large, add equal parts of these considerations. That the broken heart can cover more territory, that perhaps love can only be as large as grief demands. That grief is the growing up of the heart that bursts boundaries like an old skin or a finished life. That grief is gratitude. That water seeks scale, that even your tears seek the recognition of community. That the heart is a front line and the fight is to feel in a world of distraction. That death might be the only freedom, that your grief is a worthwhile use of your time. That your body will feel only as much as it is able to, that the ones you grieve may also be grieving you. That the sacred comes from the limitations, that you are excellent at loving. So friends, we're going to listen to this one more time together. And I'm going to invite you, as I'm reading it, if there are particular phrases that capture your attention that you know you're going to be sitting with later, that you go ahead and share those in the chat, that you connect if you want to, because after all, our tears, our grief seeks the recognition of community. So here we go again. Remember, you are water. Of course you leave salt trails. Of course you are crying. Flow. And P.S. If there happens to be a multitude of griefs upon you, which there are on all of us, individual and collective, fast and slow, small and large, let us add equal parts of these considerations. that the broken heart can cover more territory, that perhaps love can only be as large as grief demands. That grief is the growing up of the heart that bursts boundaries like an old skin or a finished life. That grief is gratitude. That water seeks scale. That even your tears seek the recognition of community. That the heart is a front line and the fight is to feel in a world of distraction. That death might be the only freedom. That your grief is a worthwhile use of your time. That your body, that trustworthy body of yours, that your body will feel only as much as it is able to. That the ones you grieve may also be grieving you. That the sacred comes from the limitations. That you are excellent at loving. You are excellent at loving. Let's take these words in. Let's take them in and hold them with us. We are in a time of great grief, collective and individual, coming at us fast and slow, small and large. We are in it. And while this is a particular moment, this is also very much what it is to be a human being. To live and lose and change, to love and lose and let ourselves love again and love even more. I'll tell you that I have learned so much from accompanying you in your grief this year and in all the years before. I keep learning by watching how you do it with such grace, with such pain at times. One of the things I love most about congregational life, about being here with you, is watching your stories change over time, of watching you lose and then love again when you never thought you could. I see your hearts growing, our spirits regenerating, even when it hurts so much. So I want to tell you just a few of the things I have learned from watching you and watching you move through grief. I've learned that we can do this. We can do it even when we don't think that we can. We can stay present to the suffering and the loss, to ourselves and each other and all of our feelings. And that we know when we need a break. And it's really good to listen to that. I know that our bodies and spirits have this intuitive, unconscious knowing about how to grieve. I know that our bodies and spirits can help us take it in, this grief, and move through it, that our bodies can actually metabolize our grief at a pace that works for us. I know there's something in our gut, in our bellies, as Seth would say, that is trustworthy and truthful and worth listening to when we are hurting. And I know that there are gifts that come with grief. We've all read about them. Some of us have experienced them. We hope for them when the pain is there, right? This renewed sense of what's really important, this sense of urgency that our time is not limited, that we know that we are mortal, that the time we have with each other might be shorter than we hoped. These are gifts indeed, but when they come with the expectation that we're going to live in that intensity all day, every day, all our lives, it's simply too much. So we catch the gifts, we notice them when they're there, and we let our bodies and spirits lead us through how much we can hold and when. I've learned that grief is not linear, that it doesn't go through 5 exact stages on a timeline, that there are so many ways and it moves back and forth and back and forth, that it's fluid and flowing. And this is where I lean on what Reverend Ruth used to say to us all the time. She used to tell us that every loss we experience rings the bell of our other losses, our older losses. And this is hard, of course, when that bell gets rung and the echo ripples out and we hear those other losses coming in when we thought what we were going through is enough and plenty. Thank you very much. But what she would say next is that when this bell of loss gets rung in us, it offers an opportunity for healing for all those older losses too. So we will lean on each other's learnings, each other's love and care, this intuitive sense in us that knows how to do even this hard thing of being alive right now in this moment. So I want us to remember that we are water. Of course, we leave salt trails. Of course, we are crying. We are meant to flow. And for those out there who, like me, love a good fact, if we are truly 60 to 70% water, of course we're meant to flow. We are not meant to be stagnant. We are meant, as hard and as good as it is, to live and lose and love and change and live and lose and love and change again and again and again, just as our ancestors have, just as those we never will know will do too. So let's count on this living, loving, losing, living, loving, losing again together, and the rhythm and the flowing that our bodies and spirits can absolutely handle. So in this time, I invite us to be blessed with the music of our choir. They have put together another beautiful piece for us. They've spent so much time and energy figuring out how to do this and connect each other and connect us. And so they are going to bless us this morning in song with one of my favorite pieces, the Gaelic blessing. It was so beautiful. Thank you for that blessing. So friends, as we prepare to close this time together, I want to remind you of the final words of the quote I shared. You are excellent at loving. You, my universalist friends, who continue to teach me and teach our world to draw the circle wider and wider and wider, so that our sense of who we are as individuals and as a community continues to expand. We are excellent at loving. Let's find some ways to share that with ourselves and each other in this week ahead. I am sending my love to you. I feel it coming back to me, whether it's over Zoom or YouTube or the podcast. Our love is rippling out to one another, to our community for healing. So for now, friends, let's sing together as we always do. Let's sing together, Go Now in Peace, and we'll join with Julika and Sophia and Aliana in singing.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
So beautiful. And now we'll extinguish our chalice, extinguish the flame, but we never extinguish the flame in our hearts, the light of love that connects us all. So I invite you, as you extinguish your chalice, if you wish to type in the chat, I carry the flame, and as Reverend Karen taught us, to say perhaps where you are carrying the flame this week. In what area of your life, in what corner of the world do you carry the flame this week?